Hey, I'm the Gamer from Mars, and today I will review Aqua Adventures for the Atari 2600. In this game, you must go underwater, collect treasure chests, come back up, and capture a mermaid. Yeah, a mermaid.
At this very desk 10 years ago, I created the first ever episode of The Gamer from Mars, using this old microphone I had laying around and a Dazzle capture card device for my video. I went and I got this Atari flashback system I had, and did a review for Aqua Adventures, which turned out not to be a real game for the Atari 2600. I learned all these years later. I knew for this milestone I had to make a video to celebrate, and while I had some ideas for something a little bit more elaborate, at the end of the day I decided it would be best to spend a bit of time for introspection of the last 10 years of my life. Since the day I set up this account, a very large amount of my energy has been put into the online space. Not just making videos, but also the business side of things and just soaking in the culture of the World Wide Web. So I think it's interesting to see how my views have changed over time. I should start this off by saying I am one of the earlier examples of someone who has never had a job besides running a YouTube business. While other teenagers were out getting part-time jobs working at a fast food restaurant, I was setting up my video monetization for my content about gaming urban legends. And by the time I was out of school and people were job hunting, I was in my basement browsing 4chan and Reddit, looking for subjects to turn into videos. The reason I bring this up is because it makes my perception of things a lot different than most. I have to take a step back at points and realize just how fortunate I've been with my channel, and that millions would kill to be a full-time YouTuber like me. But at the same time, you should know that things aren't always perfect. Over the past decade, this website has beaten me down, with algorithm changes affecting my views, people ripping off my content, businesses trying to cheat me out of money, YouTube almost deleting my account, trolls trying to turn people against me, and my ad revenue dwindling down to almost nothing at a moment's notice. Most of this stuff I never share publicly, and maybe someday I'll go in depth with all these stories in some sort of tell-all. But for now, let's start with the beginning of this tale. Even before beginning my own account, I remember when YouTube started up in 2005 and was in awe at the concept that anyone could upload a video for the world to see with the click of a button. And that excited me. While the idea of making it in something like show business or the music industry seemed far off, YouTube felt like it was in reach, because just like everything else on the internet, it was. By 2009, I was legally old enough to have my own account, and at this point I was obsessed with retro video games online. After watching so much AVGN, Irate Gamer, TurboViews, and WeViewer videos, I was determined to make my very own channel, and that is exactly what I did, even if I found no success at first. Looking back, the way I can describe this moment on YouTube was that it was exciting. The foundations to an industry was already being set up, and a few people at the top were already making money. The list of the most subscribed YouTubers was constantly changing, with new people bringing fresh ideas and concepts to the platform. When I started, Fred was the first person to pass 1 million subscribers, which was such a big milestone at the time. Sure, most of the content wasn't very good, and extremely rough around the edges, but there was a feeling of limitless amounts of potential of what you could do. In those early days, my content wasn't really that good, and my views reflected that, but the buzz around me made me want to continue. A lot of other YouTubers will delete their old videos, almost as if they're ashamed of the quality, but for me it's never crossed my mind to wipe out my old work, because looking at the progression of an individual's ability over time is one of my favorite things about this website. Looking back at those early years, I don't think it ever crossed my mind either to give up. It was just unbridled optimism. As I'm sure many of you already know, at around the 2-year mark, I made the Lavender Town Theory, which essentially took all of the video making knowledge I put together over those first 2 years and made one special episode. While I always received a few comments on my videos back then, I distinctly remember getting a lot more than usual, all telling me how great it was, and it quickly became my most popular video of all time. Shortly after that, I started making actual money from my videos. videos, had a decently sized subscriber base, and content in this new format that people were actually watching. Well, I tried a lot of different shows and ideas over the next few seasons of The Gamer from Mars. For the purpose of this video, I'll combine the next 4 years of making videos into an era I'd call making videos as a part-time job when I was in school. Kinda has a ring to it. Back then, this was a pretty good gig to have, but I must admit that as the years went on, I was playing video games less and less, but still was making that content because it's what people expected of me. Looking back now, I realize that my love of video games never really was the driving factor for starting my channel like I thought it was, but rather a means to an end. Making a name for myself on the internet is really what I wanted. By the time 2015 arrived and I was wrapping up my schooling, Nintendo started doing this very stupid thing, taking ad revenue away from creators, giving them free publicity for their failing Wii U system. That was bad news for me because I mainly liked talking about Nintendo, and this news on top of Nintendo's waning popularity at that point meant things weren't looking good. This was the last straw for me, so I decided I wanted to do something different. And because of that, I made a video on the internet about the internet. I know that idea sounds obvious now, but when I first made Top 10 4chan pranks, there hadn't really been many YouTubers talking about things like 4chan and Reddit culture in video form. And just like that, over the next 6 months, I transitioned my channel from gaming content to internet culture content, and in the process started making full-time job wages just as I was finishing up my formal education. And there you had it. I had achieved my dream I held for all those years, becoming a full-time YouTuber. And it was amazing. Until it wasn't. I've never really talked much about the personal side of the story before, but around 2 years after I started doing YouTube full-time, things kinda went downhill. My content was in a bit of a lull, and more importantly, with the mainstream media colluding to take down YouTube, they had successfully started an advertiser boycott, which had a massive impact on what type of content was economically viable on the platform. When this adpocalypse went down, my revenue immediately dropped by 75%, and that wasn't even the worst part about it to me. Instead of Google telling us what was going on, they instead were silent on the issue, and refused to tell creators like me if our revenue was going to come back, and if so, when. Imagine going into your work one day and your paycheck was now a fourth of what it used to be, and on top of that, when you asked your boss what was going on, he would just ignore you. That's where I was at. This put me in a very bad state of mind, because I essentially just had to keep on working through this entire mess, with no idea what was going to happen and if it meant after 8 years the gig was finally up for me. And as I spent months continuing to make YouTube videos that I put a lot of work into, only for them to be demonetized for unknown reasons, in what could have been a futile attempt to keep my dream job afloat, my negative thoughts drifted to other parts of my mind. As I came to other negative realizations, it was just a domino effect. At this point in time, every night as I went to bed, I'd have to put on interviews and other videos in the background to drown out the thoughts in my head, just so I'd be able to go to sleep. In fact, whenever there was a moment of silence, I'd turn on a YouTube video to distract myself. Looking back now, it's pretty troubling that the website causing me so much stress and pain was also my only coping mechanism. All the people at YouTube had to do was keep creators informed on what they were doing, but they couldn't even manage that courtesy. Eventually they brought us into the loop and my monetization rebounded to a certain extent, with sponsored messages making up the difference and then some in my earnings. The Gamer from Mars had survived the apocalypse. But since then, my thoughts about YouTube, a site I once saw as a place of limitless potential, have never been the same. I always knew that Google was just a faceless corporation, but because of the adpocalypse, it really sunk in. As I saw others leaving the platform or being flat out banned, that optimistic young me had all but vanished. I felt this way for quite a while. But with that being said, enough time has passed now that I'm seeing a glimmer of hope for the future of independent online video. I personally have some new ideas in the works for my channel that I think are pretty interesting, and I hope they can soon come into fruition soon enough. Maybe with this I'll be able to feel that excitement I once had when I first started this channel 10 years ago. Don't get me wrong, I like the videos I make now, but it's been a while since I tried something different. I've been through a lot of highs and lows over the past 10 years on YouTube. Things have changed quite a bit. But the house I've made these videos in has stayed consistent. As for this room with its weird knobs and switches that you can't stop talking about, I think it's time for a change. I bought a house. So with the YouTube money I saved over the past 10 years, I have bought myself my very own home. It's still in the remodel phase right now, so it should be a little bit longer before I move in, but when I do, it will be a brand new space for me to create videos. So I'll end the video here by saying I really do appreciate every single one of you who watches my videos. And until next time, thanks for watching.